April 1985 sees another third-party developer making games for the Nintendo. This developer is the arcade giant Taito. And here we have their Space Invaders. This starts off pretty promisingly. Now Taito was one of the major players in the arcade scene in the early 80s. They were a company that had been around for quite some time, since the 1950s. In the 70s, they started going into amusement games and arcade games. And in 1978, they released one of the most popular and influential video games of all time, Space Invaders. In a lot of ways, Space Invaders was the game that helped popularize video games. Now you would think it would not be difficult for Taito to port one of their own arcade games to the Famicom, especially one that came out in 1978. It sort of recreates the original arcade intro screen there. But once you actually start playing the game, you'll realize that something is seriously wrong. The original arcade game controls very, very smoothly and is a joy to play, even in this day and age. The Famicom version, by contrast, seems sort of stiff and sluggish. For one thing, it seems that the actual Space Invaders are much harder to hit with your cannon. When you compare the two versions, the Famicom seems to have placed the actual enemies much further apart than the original arcade version. Arcade Space Invaders has a screen that's much higher than it is wide, and it seems that when converting to the wider format used by the Famicom, something was really lost in the translation here. So it seems what should have been a pretty easy conversion eventually comes across as quite a bit of a letdown.